Okay, thanks for joining us. This session is looking at reviewing design information for construction. So I'm just going to give you a bit of an overview, and then Lawrence is going to take you into a deep dive into some technology that may help you as a contractor to review some of the great information that's being presented to us these days. Because we know that construction is now going through its digital era. We're seeing more and more technology being used on construction sites than we ever have done in the past. We're seeing iPads, paper drawings disappearing. We're seeing robotics on site, drones on sites, all sorts of different information, but it all stems from the model. Okay, the models now we're beginning to utilize. We're beginning to, have real success with clash detection and reducing waste. But the model is never really used by the contractor very much because we still build off drawings. And it'd be really great if the contractor can start really embracing the information, because behind these models is all the data. And if we can start using this data to look at what we're presenting, what's presented to them from the design and consultants, contractors can start getting some real value out of this. So what I want to try and do is just show you some examples, and Lawrence will go into this in a lot of detail, of what we can do with some temporary works, looking at what we can do with those and monitor the delivery of information requirements and reusing that information, and then looking at some of the auditing we can do within the tools itself. But the main thing is we're doing this in the Revit platform. Now, many of you thinking, oh no, not Revit, it's too complex. But what we've got is Navigate built on top of Revit here. And it's just a Revit viewer that Lawrence is using to show you. But hopefully you'll see how easy it is to manipulate this data. And we know that things like the temporary works on site, placing that tower crane, because what we're looking at is when we place it, we're using it for other things. We're looking at that lifting circle to make sure that we can lift the correct weights across the site, and it doesn't encroach other owned areas, landscaping and buildings and things like that. But if we can place them quickly into models, that'd be great to get drawings out like this, because temporary works are, they're huge really when you start looking at how much goes into there with the hoardings, the site location and things like that. We've also got the information that's actually in that Revit file. Now this bit is really key, because what we want is an easy way to get to this data and reuse the data and capture the data and view it. What we don't want is a hard way to success. We need an easy, simple way with simple tools to reuse the data to hopefully use it to colour the model. So we can see systems, we can see things in that model and use like a appearance profiler, for anyone who's used Navisworks, to literally filter the model into things that you wouldn't see with the the network that we've got of the model and the complexity of the model. So hopefully what we're going to show you today is a quick and easy way to audit this information, see things that are missing, information that may be missing in the models, but show you a quick and nice way to use it within the design authoring tools rather than third-party tools just for viewing. This is about information as well as that model. And obviously we're using the tools of Revit and Navigating here. So could I pass it over to you, Lawrence, so you could show us some of the tools that we can use to look at some of this?
Thanks, Steve. Hopefully everyone can see my screen, so let's get going. So as Steve mentioned, we're going to now look at Navigate Accelerate. So I've currently got the ribbon tab open inside Revit. You can see I've just got this simple model in here. So we might have linked in a model from, some structural engineer or architect, something like that. And what we want to now do is start to plan out where we're going to place our tower cranes and so on. Now you can see I've already got tower crane in the project at the minute. And a nice easy way of doing that is to actually use our family browser. So right at the start of the ribbon here, you can see that we've got two tools. We have our family browser, which is for local content that might be sitting on your server or on your local machine. And we also have here the cloud content, which is our own Symetri content that we store on our servers. we've actually just opened that up to customers as well. So you can actually put your own content onto the cloud and then share that around the design team. Anyway, let's go ahead and look at our family browser. Now, the great thing with this is it's all searchable. So, for example, I could go into the filter here, and let's say I want to go and find a universal column. I could just type in the term UC, and straight away here, you'll see that it then goes ahead and filters up everything in the list here. So very quickly, I can go down and actually go and find a column section. Equally, this is a standard Revit library, but equally, I can go to another folder up in here, and, you know, if I want to go and find a tower crane, for example, I can just start to type in the word tower, and straight away here, you can see that we've got access to a tower crane. Equally in here, if I wanted like a porter cabin or something like that, again, I can start to type in that term in here, and you can see we've got the content. Now, if we decide we want to go and use one of these, it's good old drag and drop. So as Steve was saying, this doesn't have to be complicated. We can literally just drag and drop it out of our family browser and place that out on screen as we want. Now, of course, not everything's going to be nicely horizontal to the screen, so we can just use spacebar in Revit just to organize that and get it into the position we want in the model. So quick, nice and easy. Okay, so that's our family browser. Now, I'm going to use that a little bit more here to actually look at some other critical things on the side, which is setting out. So we can see here that we've got this slab at the bottom here, and we can see we've got a curve in it. Now, of course, setting out something like this rectangular slab on site wouldn't be too bad because we would just fire off points on the corner and we'd have it. But when you've got curves, it's a different proposition altogether. So what we'll do here is we'll actually have a look at locating a setting out point. So again, we've got families to support this. So you can see I've got something called a 3D survey marker. I'm going to drag and drop this out. And again, I'm going to set that onto the correct location in here. Let's just pop it in there for the minute. In fact, what I need to do, 1 second, just need to make sure I'm going to post that on the slab itself, because that's really what I'm interested in. So we'll place that out over there. Right. Now, what I want to now do is basically array some of these down a path. Now, again, that's not an easy task to do inside of Revit because it's curved, of course. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to make use of this. So I'm going to take this slab edge here and just propagate it out like so. And then what we'll do here is we'll edit this workplane and get it into the right level. So I want that on my ground floor, as it were. And you can now see I've got that model line. What I'm now going to do is use Navigate to align that to the path. So I'll close down our family browser now, and we'll just go to Align to Path. So in here, we can select a component that we want to align. We can put distance in between these, but in this case, I just want a set number of positions around a curve. In this case, so I'm going to ask it to generate 20 setting out points around that curve. We'll select our element, so that's the model line that I just created there. And straight away now, we can see that Navigate has distributed equally those setting out points around the curve. Okay, now, what does that actually look like? Well, if I select one of these setting out points, I don't have any coordinate information at all in there. So, of course, at the minute, it's not that useful. So what we're going to do is use Navigate now to actually push coordinates into these elements. Now, the coordinates that I'm putting in are from British National Grid Survey. So Revit is obviously set up to real-world coordinates in here. And we're going to push those real-world coordinates across here so we can use things like robotic total stations to actually set out all of these points. So we'll go into our Manage tool up in here, and we've got one of our updaters in here, and I want to actually update these shared coordinates. So this is going to be generic models, but just to show you what else we can do, I actually push coordinates into my columns as well. So typically here, I want to work in meters, and in Revit, we're normally working in millimeters, so I'm going to convert that across. We'll convert it to 3 decimal places, and we'll basically hit go here, and we can now see the updater has run. So what does that now look like? Well, if I select one of these markers now, clearly here, we can now see we've got CQ coordinates X, Y, and Z. And of course, that contains now the easting, the northing, and the level of each one of these setting out points that we've just positioned across the model. Okay, so what we'll now do is, it's good practice to actually pin these. So I've selected all of those elements, so we'll pin them just in case anyone comes along and wants to actually move those around. So of course we can still select the elements and we can still review that data. Now, of course, if we're going to actually pass this across to a site engineer to actually start to set these things out, we would probably want it in tabular format, maybe just in Excel. So how would we do that? Because those of you who've used Revit before probably know that there's no kind of direct link out to Excel. Well, we can actually handle that quite easily within the product. Now, what I can do is I can just go into the Edit Parameters tool up here, and we can choose our category we're working on. So this is, in this case, they're just generic models up in here. And of course, I want perhaps the instance properties out over here. In here, you can see that I can actually get to my coordinates in here, my X, Y, and Z locations. We've got the family, we've got the mark, and we've got the type. So if I click OK, we can now see straight away we've got a table in here. However, this table again isn't particularly that useful at the moment because we haven't got marking on any of the elements. So of course, if we're going to set this point out here, what point is it? How do I know where that is? What we need to do is actually attribute a mark to each one of these elements. Now in Revit, that's a case of picking every single one of these elements, going to mark, and then typing in some sort of a terminology in there. So what we're going to do here is we're going to just go into our site plan, and we can see that we've got those elements in there. And we're going to use another great navigate tool called renumber. So we're going here. What we want to do is renumber by a spline. I've already got the curve because I created that for the setting out of those points in there. So we can choose the element type in here. So this is generic models, of course. We're going to position this data into the mark here. We want to start from position number 1, of course. I'll actually set up some padding in here. So you can see I've already got a prefix configured of SAP hyphen. So each one will be SAP hyphen 001, 002, and so on. Okay, and then what we'll do is we'll select the actual spline itself. We can see the sense of axes with these arrows. So if I wanted it to read from right to left or left to right, I can do that. I can click OK. Okay, and we can now see that we've got all of those elements now marked. So looking in here, you can see each one has now got a designated mark. So let's go back and actually now look at the Edit Parameters tool again. So we'll again find our generic model category inside here. Once again, I'm looking at this instance data in here. Of course, I want my easting, northing, and level inside there. We want the mark and we want the type. So again, we'll actually click OK now. And of course now you can see I've got all of that rich metadata up in there. Let's go ahead and select this. So this is just the standard data grid, and all of our data grids in Navigate actually support selection set. So what we can do here is just literally use the Control key and Shift key and just use the arrow keys to actually grab all that data. I'll copy that to the clipboard. I'll jump into Excel. Let me just make a new worksheet in here. So let's just make a new one. Okay, and then we'll post that data in. And of course now we've got that data in here ready to go. Of course that can go directly out to the site engineer to start setting those positions out actually on the site. So very, very handy. Okay, so let's go back into the model. And another thing that we often want to actually do here is be able to understand how to work with parameters and data. So if I look into my model here, let's start by looking into this little scheduling here. I've got a beam schedule at the minute. We can see in here that there's a couple of problems already. So notice in here that I've actually got 2 parameters. I've got a beam reference in there twice, and some of it's populated against one parameter and some of it's populated against another. Now this is typically what you'll find. So obviously other consultants are actually authoring these models, and at some point someone's actually created a new shared parameter with the same name as something else, and of course then when you start to populate the data across, it's all mixed up and merged together. So what can we do about fixing those types of problems? Well, the first thing we can do is we can use our advanced parameter manager. So we'll just launch this tool. What we can do is we can open up our parameters in our current Revit project. And straight away now, we can see in a nice tabular form all of the parameters in this project. Now, if we want to start deleting certain data sets in here, that would be case by case in the standard Revit tool. But in here, I can literally just group select a load of stuff that I don't actually want, and just hit delete. Another great thing I can do in here is I can start searching for things. So let's say that I want to find all the parameters relating to Kobe. Then you can see here, straight away, I can just go and search for that, and it filters and searches that list. But going back to address the duplicates in here, if I ask Navigate to actually go and find duplicates, you can see straight away that it finds all of those duplicate elements inside there. Now, of course, what that does is that tells me I've got that problem there, but it doesn't necessarily fix it for me. So what we would like to then do is the following. So if I go back into the Accelerate tool set and we go back to Edit Parameters, this time we're going to actually look at the structural framing category inside here. Oh, so there it is. Again, we can see all of the parameters that we might want to work with inside here. And the problematic one in here was the beam reference. So I can pick on the beam reference in there. Right. We can click OK. Okay, and you can now see in here, we've now collected all of those beam references together. Now, like you've just seen before, I can actually just get all the parameters in there, copy and paste it across into a spreadsheet like that. Obviously, I can merge them together in Excel, copy and post them back in, and it's simple as that. So you can see we're actually using Excel a lot here just to actually move data from Navigate into Excel, process it, and bring it back. Another example of that in here is this date format checker. So basically in here, I've actually got a column set up for date format. And going back and actually thinking about things like Kobe information, if I go and open up our mechanical category now in here, so we'll open up our mechanical equipment in here. We want to see the created on date for Kobe, and we'll open that. Okay, and I can see straight away in here, I've got a whole bunch of kind of dates in here. Some of them are correct, some of them aren't. Obviously in here, I can now go ahead, paste that in over there, and I can now see that data set. Now, in Excel, obviously you can actually set up data validation to actually highlight anything in red that isn't a proper date. But an even better workflow is I can actually have Excel flag up pass or fail in here based on a formula that I can write in here. I can then pass that data directly back into Revit and then pass that back to the consultant so then they can see all of the data that they've got to go and repair or fix. And that's one of the tough things to actually do just in Revit alone. Obviously, we can check if data exists, but you can't always check that it's in the right format. And dates here are a classic example. Someone might have done it in the American format, or they might have used 2 digits instead of 4 digits to carry the date. So, of course, we can validate as well as check that that data is actually there. Connie, thinking about Kobe data, if I go into this schedule in here, quite often we actually have to populate additional data in here. And you can see here I've got something called Kobe type size. So what that's really going to be doing is looking at things like the length, width and depth of a unit. Now, if I go into the schedule here and I want to actually add those things across, they're not here. Yeah, they don't exist in here. And the reason being is this piece of equipment inside Revit. So if I go to Edit Type, you can see I've got a whole load of parameters here that I just don't see in the schedule. So these are parameters that have been created, like shared parameters that I could actually visualize in the schedule. So consequently, we're a little bit stuck again in Revit with that, purely because the consultants used the wrong type of parameter. However, Navigate can come to the rescue again. So what we can do here is, of course, we can go ahead and now use our Edit Parameter tool to go and find that particular piece of data. So we're going back to now mechanical equipment. So let's go and find that. And then it's out. So that's mechanical equipment. This time we're looking at type data. So now you can see all of those type properties in the dialog box here. And straight away here you can see I've got unit depth, unit height and unit width. So if I bring all that across, we can now see that we've got that data inside here. Once again, in here, what I could do is I could actually copy that into a spreadsheet. But more importantly, what I can do is I can combine these pieces of data together and populate another parameter. So let's look at that. So if I go to the Combine Parameters tool inside here, let's go down and find mechanical equipment once again. So that's this one in here. Of course, we're looking on type information now. So we'll go down and find those pieces of data that we were just talking about earlier on. So I want the width, the depth, and the height. Now, I want to actually join these together with an X in between them all. Like so. Actually, I don't need the space afterwards. I need the space preceding the X. We can see a little readout here of what Navigate's going to actually give us in there. Just format that a little bit nicer inside there. And straight away here, can you see that I can then map that to these shared parameters? So in here, I can go ahead and find my my parameter that I want to write it into. Now I can see here, actually, I haven't actually got the parameter created in here. So I'll just push this out to length for this example. Of course, that's going to go out as a type parameter. So that's probably why I didn't see it in there. So it's that one, copy type size. And then I can just combine all of these parameters together. And I can see now 20 elements being updated. Quick as that. So let's now just go and pick one of these pieces of mechanical equipment. Let's pick on that one in there, for example. And we're going to edit type. And then now you can see my copy type size is populated. Right? And that's a very typical thing with Kobe. We need to collect information from different areas within Revit, combine it and process it, and then write it into the relevant parameters. You can see Navigate just makes short work of those types of exercises. Now, another thing that I really like about the tool set is the ability just to visually check things on the screen. And we use one of our favorite tools here called Color Elements to do this. So let's click on Color Elements in here. And first thing I'd like to do is just understand the structural columns in my project. So I'm going to click on Structural Columns here. You can see that we've again got instance or type parameters. So here I'm actually going to run on my instance parameters. What I want to do is understand the base level of my columns. So if I do this, you can see straight away now we've run color elements. All of those colors are now attributed to each of the columns. So straight away I can actually check that all the columns are in fact on the correct levels they should be. Let's have another check now. Let's go to structural framing. And what I want to do here is just understand the various different steel types that I've got within the project. So coming down here, we'll just use type name. And now I can see everything is colored according to its type name. Now, as we're checking things in here, this is where we'll probably find errors and problems. And I can see here there's a difference between these two elements. Yeah. Here, I've got exactly the same section size, but there's slightly different weights in there. So what I might want to now do is consolidate that. So I can select this row in here. We can see here, I can actually show those elements in the properties. Of course, now I could just go in here and actually swap that out for the next type, refresh my color elements, and now the problem is purged, basically. So not only can we actually check things in here, but we can edit and amend those problems that we find. We'll just look at a couple more tool sets in here. Let's say that we just want to find the summation of data in a selection set. What I could do is select all of these slabs in here. We can go on to our Navigate Accelerate tab, and then I can just click on our Sum tool up in here. And you can see anything that's numeric you can actually make a summation of. But in here, for example, you can see that I've now got the combined volume in concrete on all of those different slabs. Okay, so there's a quick overview of some of the features that you can utilize in construction with Navigate Accelerate.